Devil Fruit Awakenings. Oh my god, this is a mess. Okay, so this video is going to have two premises, whatever. One is going to be a discussion on awakened devil fruits in general, the stuff that we know so far in the story. Not very much of it, but what so far Oda has actually given us in the way of awakened fruits, as well as my thoughts on it, because we know so little, a lot of this is speculation, and every time someone makes a video about awakened devil fruits, my god, they go crazy with the ideas of what they could possibly be. But that's part of the fun of One Piece. That's why I love talking about it so goddamn much. You know, the little things in the story that we don't know much about, and we could speculate on, oh man, I wonder if it's this or that, or if it could do this, or does this mean that this character could do that now? It's crazy. I love it. I'm pumped. I'm excited. Okay, and the second is going to be discussing Luffy's devil fruit, the Gumu Gumu no Mi, and what his awakening could be, and what that could entail. Okay, so as far as what we've seen so far in the story, what Oda has actually given us, the first time the term awakening was actually dropped, do you know who dropped it? It was Crocodile, yes. Crocodile brought it up in Impel Down, referring to the Demon Guards. So the 4 Demon Guards are confirmed to be awakened zone-type devil fruits, as in they have zone powers. They can turn into a rhinoceros, koala, cow, and zebra, respectively, but also they have some unique abilities along with that. During Impel Down, we saw that the Demon Guards were exhibiting feats of great strength, even beyond what most zones are capable of, as well as an accelerated healing. Even after, you know, Bon Clay and Luffy and Galdino took out, you know, Minotaurus, you know, and he came back, and then Bon Clay's all surprised, like, what the fuck, we beat him, what the hell? And then Crocodile's like, wouldn't really matter if you did, because they're awakened zones, they'll heal quicker. So, at the point in the story, because we didn't know what the fuck it was, we're like, oh, okay, this... Actually, I'll be honest with you, a lot of people back then just thought it was something limited to just zones. If you've been following One Piece for a long time, that's what we thought, like, oh man, this is just something that zones can do. But no, it was confirmed later on during Dressrosa by our good buddy Doflamingo that it was in fact something that all devil fruits are capable of. Well, he didn't expressly say all devil fruits are capable of it, but he's a Paramecia. I mean, if you're going to include Paramecias in zones, why not would the Logias be excluded for that, right? So, yeah, all devil fruits are capable of awakenings. Now, the thing that Doflamingo said, he was kind of saying it to kind of like talk smack to Luffy, you know, because he figured, you know, he was going to be able to beat Luffy no problem, and so he's going on this spiel about awakenings, like, listen up, you little fledgling, you little pleb, you know, there is a level beyond the norm, and that is referred to as an awakening. And then he used his abilities, the Ito Ito no Mi, the string fruit, to turn the surrounding area, the street, the cobblestone, the buildings into string for him to manipulate. The whole town was bending to his will. You know, so that was a Paramecia awakening, you know, so in his case, turning the area to string because his devil fruit could control string. It was also implied vaguely by Doflamingo, I felt like he was saying that it takes, you know, many years of training to attain this level, you know, and so that's something that Doflamingo used a few times during his fights with Law and Luffy, how, you know, he's lived through so much more than Luffy has, you know, he's an adult, he's like, I don't have time to deal with your fucking kid problems, I'm an adult, I've lived through shit, I know what the world is, I'm gonna beat the shit out of you, you know? So it might be something that takes many more years to master. Now, when we get to zones, I have to talk about Chopper, very briefly, and you might be thinking, like, okay, what's the deal with him? I do believe that his monster point is an awakening. However, I just said that it takes many years to master, so what the fuck? Chopper is an exception to this rule, and I'll tell you why, and it's because of the Rumble Balls. Okay, Chopper, it was fucking around with his devil fruit, which most people don't normally do. After having the human fruit, he was able to have increased intelligence, and, you know, he was able to develop this thing, and a pill that actually fucked with the frequency of his devil fruit. So he basically like forced himself into an awakening, but it wasn't perfect because it's horrible. You know, you can't control your actions and you're just this mindless brute that kills everything around you. And even after you escape that form, after Chopper got forcibly knocked into the water, he couldn't move for a long time after that. So that's not a very efficient transformation. And even after the time skip, even after he achieved the ability to stay in control control, it's still a forced awakening transformation, I feel, because he has to still have the Rumble Ball, and he can only stay in the form for like a few minutes, and then afterwards he still can't move. So it hasn't improved very much. It's just he has control over it now, but it's not like he can go into this form whenever he wants or as long as he wants, which I feel like in a true awakened power would be able to have that capability. So when it comes to zones, they turn into like a large, monstrous form of their devil fruits, higher strength, all their base stats get increased. Of course, zone fruits are the ones that boast the most physical strength, so that would make sense. Their healing gets increased, obviously. Probably things like hearing and sight and sound and smell, that stuff too. Hearing and sound are the same thing, Matt. But also, their basic, size increases. That's something to go along with there too. When it comes to Logias, I'll mention that really quick. We don't know any Logias that are confirmed to be awakened, but we can assume that the higher ranks in the Marines, such as the admirals, are probably going to have awakened devil fruits if anybody would have them. When we learned about Aki Inu and Aokiji's fight on Punk Hazard, we learned that their battle actually changed the layout and the environment of the island. Punk Hazard was originally just a desolate wasteland where nothing was growing, and then after Aki Inu and Aokiji fought for a few days, the island was permanently altered. Half of it was boiling hot and molten magma and volcanoes and shit, and the other half was frozen because of Aokiji's power. So, given that knowledge, we could understand that perhaps if you're an awakened Logia, or Logia, I don't know. Everyone always bitches at me for pronunciations, so I'll just throw in every pronunciation and then no one can get mad at me. But yeah, given that was the situation afterwards, we can figure, okay, maybe when you're an awakened Logia, it actually alters the weather itself, the environment around you. If you output enough power, if you activate your awakened abilities and you have the Magu no Mi like Aki Inu, it actually creates fucking volcanoes and shit. And molten magma starts, and Aokiji's blows up a blizzard out of nowhere, So that's, and it's still like that, even to this date, even after their fight. Many, if it was just like a thing where they were overusing their powers on the fight, that would be one thing, but it actually permanently altered the weather. So I'm going to say that's an awakening for a Logia, and that would make sense given that Logias are usually referred to as the strongest of the three devil fruit types. But then we get to Paramecia and Luffy, and this is the problem. See, you would just say, oh, well, we saw with Doflamingo, when a Paramecia becomes awakened, they can extend their ability to the area around them. There you go, easy squeezy lemon peasy. Not necessarily though, because Paramecias are basically the category that doesn't fit into the other two categories, meaning that Paramecias don't have just one general ability that's shared amongst all of them. The only requirements for being a Paramecia essentially are you're not a Logia and you're not a zone. Okay, I guess you're a Paramecia then. So you have Paramecias like Magellan, who's able to create poison on his body. He can't turn into poison, but he can create poison. Galdino can create wax, so those are characters that are creating something, substance. Then you have other characters that are made of said substance, like Luffy. Luffy cannot, create rubber out of nothing, but he is made of rubber. His physical body's made of rubber. And then you have weird-ass ones like the jacket fruit that turns you into a jacket to be worn as somebody else. You have fucking Bartolomeo's barrier ability that can create something out of nothing. So these don't fit into specific categories, It's basically just a fucking free-for-all for Oda to create whatever ability he fucking wants to, So it's not as simple as just saying he can create something around him. Case in point, Brook. I'm going to be doing a discussion video on Brook pretty soon. Actually, yo-ho-ho-ho, but Brook, he has the Yomi Yomi no Mi, the Revive fruit, right? And that is something that is just fucking weird because it allows you to come back from the dead after you die, and then it gives you the ability to actually access your soul. Like, your soul can leave your physical body, and you can supercharge weapons with your soul and shit like that. So you're wondering, okay, how does that awakening work? A lot of people thought this was an awakening. At first, I thought it wasn't. At first, and I'm still, by the way, I guess I should clarify, I could possibly see how this could be an awakening, although I'm still not 100% convinced, because the context of this fight and I'll get to Luffy in a second because that was the premise of this video, but the context of this fight was that he was fighting against homies that had souls of other people in them, and so because Brook had the Yomi Yomi no Mi, and he was running on soul power, you know, his supercharged soul would scare the shit out of these chess soldiers that don't even have their own souls. They're borrowing others. So the way I took it at first was the way that these chess soldiers viewed Brook's power was like this. A fucking demon coming out, and he's like, oh, I'm scared, I'm gonna pass out. It wasn't an actual awakening. But as I said, as Doflamingo implied, you know, it takes a long time to access your awakened of your devil fruits. We don't know how it's triggered exactly, but Brook is old. You know, he spent 50 fucking years on a ship by himself with his devil fruit powers. You'd think, honestly, he'd figure out some way to access the soul ability while he was 50 years on the ship, and he didn't learn it until after the time skip, or during the time skip, so I don't know what the fuck you were doing on that ship for 50 years, Brook. Yeah, so he had a lot of time, though. He had a lot of time with his devil fruit, longer than any other member of the Straw Hats. So if there was any member of the Straw Hats that would have access to an awakening that he can control fairly well, sure, it would be Brook. Hell, you can probably even maybe say that the ability for the soul to leave his body and charge his weapons up, that could even be an awakening. I could get it because Brook has had his power for 52 fucking years, and he's had a lot of time to figure this stuff out. So, you know, I'm still not 100% convinced, but that's the case. So, going by everything that I've just said to you and some other speculation, I would assume that Luffy's awakening power would be to change the environment around him into rubber, based on an ability that he's not able to create rubber the same way that Doflamingo can just summon strings. But given the fact that, you know, rubber's not really a thing, like strings make sense. Like, I'm going to create a string and I could throw strings at you and shit like that. Luffy's body's just physically made of rubber, you know, so whatever. I mean, what's he gonna do, summon rubber bands to fling at people? I mean, that would just be stupid. Yeah, out of everything I've just explained to you, fucking talking skeleton with an afro, that would be stupid. No. But I still think it's a substance that he's made out of, right? So I think that would make perfect sense to me, that he could do that. And it might be a case because rubber is malleable, you know, at certain temperatures you can actually change its shape and stuff like that. Think about that for a second. So let's just assume like Luffy was fighting Doflamingo, except Luffy had an awakening, you know, he could change the area to rubber. You know, it wouldn't be as simple as just, I'm going to turn like, okay, the ground is now rubber, those buildings are now rubber, that fence is now rubber, rubber's malleable. He could actually maybe change the actual layout of the area itself. You know, he can, like, bend the fucking, you know, the street into a giant hill or a chasm or, you know, I don't know, sculptures of something. You know, you could have, you know, clever use of this. You know, Luffy, okay, in Luffy's case, he would probably just use it to, I don't know, make a giant thing of meat sculpture. I don't know, but the idea that rubber's malleable and that you can change its shape and shit like that would certainly would play more advantage to that. You know, like sort of like his rubber world. And honestly, by the way, if he ever actually achieved an awakening, which, okay, when he achieves awakening, because Luffy's pretty much going to have it at some point. I mean, pretty much. He's the main character. It was announced that it was going to be a thing. He's going to have an awakening. He's probably just going to honestly call it like Gear 5th. At that point. I don't think Luffy has a Gear 5th. I don't think he has anything beyond Gear 4th. But if he ever achieved an awakening power, that would be probably his Gear 5th ability, and it would be like Rubber World or something he would call it, you know? Or Bounce World, going off of like Bounce Man, you know? So that's one way I can view it. Something else, though, I also thought of this for an awakening. A lot of people thought this was going to be Gear 4th, and I was kind of disappointed it wasn't, but I still like Gear 4th. It's pretty cool. Is going off the malleability thing. If you don't want to, okay, if you don't want to take it the same way as Doflamingo's, because it's just not the same kind of fruit that doesn't produce, you know, like Doflamingo's strings. I'm like, okay, that's fine. How about this? Taking into account the malleability of rubber, but keeping it in Luffy's body. Ergo, Luffy can actually alter the shape of his body itself. We're not just talking about, you know, Gear 3rd blowing himself up, or making, you know, a giant tank man, or honestly, sort of like blowing up his muscles, as what he did with Bounce Man or anything like that. We're talking about like he can actually create different shapes. You know, if Luffy wanted to change his hand into a battle axe, he could do that. A club, a sword. You know, I mean, it wouldn't be, you know, well, maybe it would be a sharp sword. Who knows? You know, if he turns his fucking arm into a sword and then armament hockeys that shit up, Luffy's got a fucking black armor sword. That'd be cool, right? Come on now. You know, going along the same line of it, when he does Gear 3rd, he always, you know, adds the armament to it now, and it gets it fucking hard as shit. So Luffy's always lacked, you know, the ability to use like slicing attacks and shit like that. He did have a sword when he was Nightmare Luffy, but that was under very rare circumstances. So for him to have the ability to access, you know, bladed weaponry to change his body into these different kinds of weapons, and then he could add the hockey to them so they can actually have an edge, you know, that would be fucking cool, right? We can do that. So it's one of those two options I have right now for Luffy's awakening, that he can actually turn the malleability of his body to create different weapons and shapes, or he could actually change the area around him and then manipulate that into whatever shape he wants, as Rubber World, as I explained. But yeah, those are the two ideas I have for his awakening. What do you guys think? If it could be something else, let me know. And what do you guys think about awakenings in general? Do you think it's something, I'm way off base here, there's something else involving awakenings that I'm just not aware of, you know, or something I missed in the series? I don't think I missed anything in the story. It's only been mentioned like 2 or 3 times. Actually, I only think twice. I think the time with the Demon Guards and then Doflamingo, the only times it's been expressly mentioned as an awakening. It's just that every single time now that a Devil Fruit shows some type of power that's a little bit OP, everybody fucking loses their shit and is like, it's a fucking awakening! I'm like, Oda, just explain this. Give us a little bit more to go off of, Oda, please, so we can maybe advance this argument a little bit. That'd be lovely. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. Love you all. Apologize for the voice. I'm still getting over shit. But love you guys. Tekking101 signing out. See ya.